Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers. So I want to sort of paint a picture for everybody out there, not just New York Jet fans, but for Jet fans specifically. This moment in time, last night, September 11th, it's a patriotic day, at least it has become that for this country. And it is the most hope that a franchise and a fan base has ever had. And even I found myself caught up in the moment of Aaron Rodgers running out in the field, the American flag, New York City, like all of it. And 4 plays into the game, all of that hope is just crushed in what has to be the most excruciating way possible. And so I asked at the beginning of the show, is being a New York Jets fan the worst fan experience in pro sports? And after last night, it's hard to argue that it's not.
It might be, and it's really hard not to feel bad for Jets fans. I don't know, truthfully, that there are too many people out there that feel bad for Aaron Rodgers necessarily, because he's a very polarizing figure in the world of sports, and you either love him or you hate him, sort of. And I do think it's ridiculous. If there's anyone out there who's like genuinely happy about this, like you're an awful person. But it's just bad luck, man. Like the look on Robert Saleh's face when they showed him on TV, like, and he just was just like blank face. Like, I wish in that moment we could have heard what he was saying to himself in his head, like it just like, you've got to be kidding me. Here we go. Zach Wilson again. Like, I mean, it's just awful, man. Like, I don't know any other way to describe it. Extremely unfortunate. I feel bad for Jets fans, extremely bad for them.
Oh, 100%. And I do feel bad for him because, as you pointed out, like, he tore his Achilles. That is not a good injury, especially at his age, to come back from. It's painful. There's a lot of recovery and rehab. And I don't wish that upon anybody, except maybe Deshaun Watson, but not even, right? Like, I don't even wish bodily harm on anybody in that sort of fashion. Like, if Deshaun Watson slips in the shower, fine, anybody could do that, but I'm not going to wish him to get hurt on the football field. But the New York Jets were so amped about this, and I know that I have been skeptical about whether Rodgers could come in and actually be successful with this franchise, because you know me, I don't trust franchises that can't be trusted, that haven't proven to me that they can be trusted. And I'm very weary of franchises that haven't done any semblance of consistent winning in the last 30 years. I'm talking about Browns, Lions, Dolphins, Jets. All of these franchises have found some way to mess it up. And I sort of felt like the other shoe was going to drop. But in no way did I think it was going to drop quite like that, where 4 plays into it, he's carted off. Like, are you kidding me? Like, carted off. I can't imagine what it must have been like for Robert Saleh. And what I'm doing now while you talk through some of the other particulars of this is I'm going to come up with the top 5 things that were going through Robert Saleh's head. And we're going to do that in a little bit.
So one of the toughest parts about this, and I text you about an hour before kickoff. I sent you a screenshot of FanDuel had a special, plus 200 odds. They increased it from plus 100 to 200, meaning, you bet $20. Like, plus 100 would be even money, for those of you who aren't aware. You bet $20, you win, you get $20. Plus 200 means you bet $20, you win $40 profit. So it was Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen combined for 500 yards or more passing. And I'm like, easy. This is easy money, man. Like, that's what I'm thinking.
You did ask, is this too easy? And I even gave you an out. Just want to point that out.
You did. Because you mentioned the weather, right? And that it was wet. Now, I don't know that it was actively raining at game time, and on turf. So I don't know how much the rain would have been a factor, but whatever. Anyhow, this was a common, bet. There were a lot of different sports books that were doing things involving this game, Monday Night Football, 9/11 specials, stuff like that. DraftKings and several other sports books, they voided any prop bets or anything that had Aaron Rodgers as a part of them and gave everybody their money back. FanDuel, however, did not. And they were getting eviscerated on X for their lack of customer service, I guess, if that's the way you want to look at it. Now, I can see both sides of it. I think maybe DraftKings, some of these other sports books were taking this as an opportunity to maybe win some more customers over by showing a little sympathy in the situation. But let's say it was a horse race, and right out of the gates, one of the horses breaks its leg, and you bet on that horse. The track's not going to void your bet. You know what I mean? And now that's a little different because it's such a shorter event, maybe. And so you could make that argument where this football game, like literally, he might as well have not even played. Like he did nothing. He got sacked. He handed the ball off a couple times. He got sacked. It's kind of interesting. I don't care. Like I bet small amounts of money. It was like $5 or something, whatever. But there's people fired up about FanDuel's lack of willingness to void the Aaron Rodgers bets, and it was just entertaining to scroll through a lot of the comments. And also on the heels of this, I want to say, obviously, it was well documented on this show my feelings about Zach Wilson, but I got to give the guy a little bit of credit. Last night, he came in and he got the job done. And he's not Aaron Rodgers, but he did what he had to do to win. He competed, and I do think that spending months around Aaron Rodgers has maybe helped him a little bit, even if it just sort of took the pressure off of him for a while because he didn't feel the weight of the franchise maybe on his shoulders and was able to kind of come out into that game with the, hey man, I got nothing to lose. Like nobody's expecting anything from me, and so let's just let it fly. And he did that, and so like I said, I want to give credit where credit's due. I still think he's a punk, but he played well enough for them to win, man. That was a big win for the Jets, especially with what happened. At least there was a little bit of positivity that came from it.
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of positivity. And if you're a Jets fan, I think it almost hurts more that the team guts out a win and you don't have Rodgers for the rest of the year because this is a talented football team, especially defensively. And so you got to feel like, man, there's still so much potential there. It's got to hurt a little bit more, right? It's like when you get broken up with and you're like, but we left so much on the table. And I feel like the Jets did leave a lot on the table. And can Zach Wilson do it? Well, that's a question we're going to be talking to ourselves about for a long time. But before I get into my top 5 list, one of the things that I've heard about with this specifically, and I've heard this over the years, and I actually don't know enough to understand, or I know enough to be dangerous, but I've heard this from many, many players. Many of the players, former and current, were honing in on the turf aspect of it. And a lot of players every year come out and say, give us natural grass. What's interesting is that many of the stadiums in the NFL have switched over to field turf, I assume, because it's easier to maintain. And you don't get what you ended up having a couple years back, where you have a rain game in the Meadowlands and the field is absolute slop, and we're worried about people getting hurt. I don't know enough about this. You played and you coached. What do you think is the difference, I guess, in this turf versus natural grass? And why do you think a lot of the players are honing in on that in particular as it relates to some of these injuries? And is there legitimacy in going back to grass because it would make the game safer?
So I don't know a ton about it either. I mean, now when I was coaching, when I played, I never played on the type of field turf they use now. Like when I played in high school, all the fields we played on were grass fields. And when I played youth football, though, we did have a chance to play at the RCA Dome at the time in Indianapolis, where the Colts played before a Colts game, and that was the old school turf, which was a different story. That stuff blew. There's a long list of knees that were ruined by the old school AstroTurf, but the new turf is supposed to sort of function like grass. It's long, and they use rubber pellets, or the new thing is they use wood chips. Now, you hear wood chips, you're like, that sounds dangerous, but I mean, like, they're machined to where they're basically like pellets. There's no sharp edges, and that almost functions as dirt, soil within the field turf. And so it's supposed to give like grass gives when you plant. Your foot's supposed to be able to slide on it naturally, but there's no replicating natural grass. But I really can't speak to the science, if you will, on what makes it more dangerous. I have to assume something with the give when you do plant, that it doesn't give under pressure the same way that natural grass does. And that may lead to more knees, ankles, Achilles, things of that sort. It's not fun to be tackled on, I can tell you that much. And the stuff with the rubber pellets in it especially is hot, man. Screaming hot. And like if it's 100 degrees in the bleachers, it's 120 degrees on the turf. I mean, like I remember times in the summer, because when I was coaching, we had a turf field. And if we were ever out there in the summer for practice in the middle of an August afternoon, I mean, the bottom of your feet were like hot through your shoes from the heat coming off the turf. And Now, they may have systems in some of these college and pro stadiums that helps with some of that stuff possibly. I do think that's the reason that the wood pellets came in, is it's supposed to be cooler than the rubber. But in terms of injuries, man, again, I can't speak intelligently about maybe what it is, but I can only assume it's something to do with the give that exists when you plant.
I guess what confuses me is the fact that whenever we have these sloppy games and they always talk about the field conditions, remember how bad the field conditions were for the Super Bowl? And that's all people talked about as to why the game wasn't as good, or why these players couldn't do whatever they were supposed to do. And so the NFL and most of the franchises put in this field turf. I always assumed that it was a better alternative because whenever you had rain, you didn't have to worry about a sloppy field. And I would assume that a sloppy field would lead to more injuries. And I just always assumed that, like, if it wasn't taken care of. But I guess when it comes to these types of injuries, Aaron Rodgers' foot wouldn't have necessarily planted there. It may have slid a little bit and maybe it wouldn't have done any damage, but there's no way of knowing that. It's all conjecture. I just have noticed that a lot of players talk about give us natural grass, but also are these the same players that are complaining about the field conditions when it's regular turf and things aren't on the up and up? So like, where is the middle ground here? Like, how do you figure out what it is? And I don't think that turf was the reason that Aaron Rodgers got hurt. I think it was just a random happenstance that may have still happened on grass. And I think that a torn Achilles, not a great injury, but I'm so much happier that he got that instead of what happened to Dak Prescott in 2020, where you have like your foot dangling and like in another direction. It's not great, but I don't know how much the field had to do with it. And I wish I did know more, because it seems counterintuitive to what I've always assumed, is that this field turf is a much safer alternative because it is the same all the time. And they've updated it from that AstroTurf that you played on, which is basically just like, that basement carpet that people used to put down. Like, that's all that it really is. It's concrete with that on it, basically.
Now, it was surprisingly squishy. I remember that, which honestly is probably a big part of what would cause some injuries, is the springiness of it when you went to plant and stuff like that. I think now, back in like the 80s when they first came out with it, I do think it was a lot harder then. It was basically rolled out on top of concrete or something like you said. And technology improved it over the years, or attempted to. And there's a lot of technology behind the field turf stuff now. And is it really the cause? I don't know. There's probably just as many injuries that happen on grass. I mean, NBA players plant on a basketball floor and have knee injuries, ankle injuries too. So I think it's just the nature of the sport to some degree. And, I think that it provides from week to week a more consistent playing surface, which I think would be appreciated. And then also, though, a reason I think a lot of franchises and stadiums, whoever owns the facility, why they do this is it allows them to have an event there 2 days before the game, a concert or something, and not have any damage done to the playing surface and move on with business as usual. Because how many times have we seen? I think it happened Soldier Field a year or two ago. Chicago was terrible. Like they had there was a big concert at Soldier Field, and like 2 days later the Bears played, and I think they actually had to come in and replace the turf in just a few days, and it was absolutely awful. And I'd have to believe that playing on field turf would be better than playing on a field that was laid with fresh sod just 72 hours prior that's sliding all over the place. But I'm not a sports scientist that would know the facts.
No. So let me ask you this. Should Aaron Rodgers come back and play, or do you think that he should call it a career after an injury like this, where he is in his career, and can he actually recover from this and still be the same guy?
I think that's tough. I was thinking about that today. I could see him just being like, all right, man, that's my sign. Time to walk away. But is he like Tom Brady, where he's just got that drive to compete? Now, I don't think his personality appears to be that way. He seems very cavalier about sort of taking it. I think he takes it seriously, but just the vibe he puts off, it's like he could take it or leave it sort of deal. He flirted with hosting Jeopardy and stuff like that a couple years ago. So I really don't know if I could say either way. If he feels like he can still play the game at a high level, he should come back and do that. But what happens? What happens if Zach Wilson is got it figured out and he comes out here and he has a career year and takes the Jets to the AFC Championship game. What do you do then if you're the Jets and Rodgers wants to come back? I mean, I guess you could trade Wilson or whatever, but one more question, and I want to hear your opinion on this, but one more question too that I'd like you to answer is, do you think there's any chance that any of these recently retired veteran quarterbacks maybe come out of retirement? You know, there's a few of them, right? There's Ben Roethlisberger, of course, Tom Brady, maybe even Phillip Rivers. There's several of them out there. They could probably still help a team if the price was right. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I think at this point, the Jets should not go after somebody who is retired right now, because I think that your best bet is to just see what you actually do have in Zach Wilson. He had a whole offseason with Aaron Rodgers there, got to learn under his wing. And from all the accounts, it seems like Aaron Rodgers really had embraced that football team and embraced the situation that he was in. He was basically a savior of Jets football. And to your point, Zach Wilson came in. Now, he made a terrible read in the second quarter and threw a terrible Zach Wilson interception, but those things are going to happen. But is there really any value to bringing in a guy who hasn't played in a while? Like, the names I saw were Carson Wentz, no. Matt Ryan, no. Jameis Winston, maybe, but you have a high-risk, high-reward situation there, and maybe that's a little bit more advantageous because there's higher highs with Jameis Winston, but also some big-time lows. Like, I'm not sure 30 touchdowns, 30 picks is going to get it done with this team. I think that Zach Wilson is the option, because I just believe that right now, if you're Robert Saleh, outside of the things that I've already talked about and we'll list off here in a minute, you're looking at Zach Wilson and saying, all right, dude, like, we brought in this guy and to try to light a fire under your ass, and he's now not here. It's your club again. This is put up or shut up time. Either do it or just don't do it. And I think that Zach Wilson needs to be given the chance now. I mean, he has been given the keys to a Ferrari. This is a team ready to win now. He has another year under his belt, and the city of New York is hoping that he can deliver. This is his time. If he's going to grow up and mature in front of us, I think you have to give him that opportunity, because I don't think that taking one of these guys, even Tom Brady, off of the shelf, off of retirement, is going to get it done, because I just don't think that those guys are ready to play now. Getting them up to game speed, all that, it takes time. I don't think it's the right thing to do. As for Aaron Rodgers, if I'm him, I mean, it's his decision, but I'm looking at this and thinking, I'm done, because this is a really tough injury to come back from. What am I going to be like on the back end of it? And do I really need this going forward? Because what happens if I recover, come back, and it happens all over again? And it's possible that it could, because he's got to play on that same field. He's got to do the same thing. And he's less and less mobile and able to extend plays than he used to be, because I did read a report that he wanted these plays with these cut blocks taken way back or scaled way back, because he can't extend plays the ways that he used to. And that's the kind of play that he got hurt on. I don't know. I just think that after everything he went through at the end in Green Bay, all the drama this offseason, he finally got to where he wanted to be. It just didn't work out. Retire, become a Hall of Famer, smoke a lot of dope, whatever it is that you do in life. I don't care. I just think that it's time. I did see a really funny joke that he was in a darkness retreat again, and they showed the blue tent, and I was like, man, that's a little rough. Like, people had some fun with Aaron Rodgers, and I think it's just lighthearted fun. I don't think it's meant to be malicious, but Aaron Rodgers should retire. Zach Wilson needs to grow up, and if he can, and he can just be 25% better than he was last year, the Jets are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Just my opinion.
That'd be wild, man. That's the kind of stuff that they make movies about, right? If that happens. And one thing I would be fascinating is maybe they try to find one of these like journeyman backup guys that is recently retired, or that's, like like Ryan Fitzpatrick or something, to come in and be the backup, just to be like that veteran presence in the quarterback room, to sort of help keep Zach Wilson in line. Now, I mean, you got to assume, obviously, Rodgers probably have to have surgery and everything else, so it might be a while before he's able to be around. I'm curious if he chooses to be around, though, even after surgery, once he's maybe mobile. I don't know what the sort of future looks like in a situation like that, but I think he could use someone like that, though. Is Chase Daniels, didn't he recently retire?
They had Joe Flacco, though, so I don't know who else you want to bring in. And speaking of Joe Flacco, let's get to top 5 things that were going through Robert Saleh's head when he was memed after Aaron Rodgers got hurt. Okay, are you ready for this? I put this together very, very quickly,
Yes.
but we're doing this. Okay, number 5, he'll be back, right? I mean, that had to have gone through his head, right? Where he's staring off into the distance thinking he'll
Oh,
be back, right?
I figured he's just looking like, "You've gotta be kidding me." Like, this, of course, would happen to me right here, right now.
Yep. Number 4, can I sign Joe Flacco? I mean,
Joe Flacco seems like the most boring human being ever.
yeah, right up there with Kirk Cousins. Number 3, Woody is so sending me to Saudi Arabia. Little shot at Woody there. Okay, number 2, I can't watch Zach again. And number 1, I hope Nick Saban is hiring.
Exactly, man.
Yes.
Like, it's fun though. Just it's fun in the sense that they didn't lose anything. The Jets didn't lose anything from a storyline standpoint, right? Because if Zach Wilson can come out and continue to do what he did, and he made mistakes, but he did enough for them to win. Now their defense really stepped up. It would be probably just as fascinating, if not a more fascinating story, if Zach Wilson is able to have success with this team this year.
100%. They'll be the darlings of the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's just we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see, right?
Jets, Lions with Zach Wilson, Jared Goff, MCDC in the Super Bowl. I'm here for it. And political football would be here for it. Dave and Cleve, it would be one of the greatest moments in Matty Ice Media Network history. And I'd be here for it. And I think I'd be rooting for the Jets. If Zach Wilson can get his big boy pants on and get that team to a Super Bowl, he deserves a lot of credit.
That would be the wildest Super Bowl ever, man. Like, that's one of those Super Bowls where, you know what? Don't even roll the balls out. I just want this to be like a fist fight, like just a fight, a battle royale, like to the death, like that. I mean, those are two tough ball clubs, right? That they're kind of built with the same sort of mentality and, dare I say, grit. Yeah, it would be a blue collar Super Bowl. That's what I'm gonna call it.
I
Super Bowl for the working man.